eleksyon. Siyempre, habang mag-eleksyon na yung mga kakakandidato, hahanap ng paraan para mapababa yung rating ng administrasyon dahil kung hindi, wala silang pag-asang manalo. Pero itong bahagyang pagbaba po ay hindi naman po mabilis na pagbaba. No? Hindi masyadong alarming and it is still very good by any standard.
You heard Palace spokesman Harry Roque downplaying the president's lower satisfaction ratings in June. He says such dips in a chief executive's ratings is normal right before election season.
But analysts see President Duterte's popularity taking a bigger hit. This as the Senate looks into corruption allegations over the government's purchase of pandemic supplies. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Robbie Alampa. You're watching The Big Story. Will face masks and face shields be the president's undoing? This as several questions remain over the government's ties with Pharmally.
Political pundits say the ongoing hearings on Pharmally could hurt his chances in next year's polls. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez has the big story.
With just a little over 8 months left in his term, President Duterte is fighting one of the biggest scandals of his presidency, the Senate investigation into the procurement of face masks and face shields. Over the course of 9 hearings, senators kept coming back to the links between Pharmally and Miguel, Duterte's former economic advisor. Analysts say the issue is bound to hurt his popularity.
Global barrel yung issue na yan, corruption and economic consequences of COVID. Ang tanong, mapapanagot ba ang Pangulo? The President would suffer from all these accusations.
Just this week, SWS released a survey showing the president's satisfaction rating dropped to 75% in June this year. That's lower than his record high grade in November last year of 84%, but is still considered pretty high for a president's final year.
Normally, yung pong mga Pangulo, pag nakaganito na sa laylayan niyang kanyang panunungkulan, nagiging lame duck na yung Pangulo. We take it as a challenge.
In the latest hearing, Blue Ribbon Chair Senator Dick Gordon continued to implicate the president. He called the DOH spending on COVID supplies the mother of all corruption.
Pagdating sa Chinese companies, ang galing-galing ng ating gobyerno. Hindi man niya dinidepensahan ang mga Pilipinong kumpanya upang maisagawa ang panggarambong sa bayan. Kailangan ma-appoint si Lau at alam natin kung sino nag-appoint kay Lau at Leong.
In turn, Duterte has also continued to lash out at the lawmakers, something experts say is his way of defending himself to his base.
He is actually talking to those constituency, then they build on that. So magandang basahin, is it enough to turn it around? Kasi right now, when you look at really with Pharmally, there's a lot of missteps.
All these missteps come to light. President Duterte's ability to convert his popularity into votes will be put to the ultimate test in the 2022 elections. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, VR1 News.
Is there reason to believe that the ongoing investigations on Pharmally will impact the president's popularity as we head into election season? Let's find out from a political scientist who is also a fellow of the Social Weather Station's Professor George Tigno. Professor Tigno, welcome to The Big Story.
Yes, thank you, Robbie.
Professor, two things here. Ano ba talaga ang storya dito? The relatively high number still for President Duterte or what is being perceived as a downward trend?
Okay, there are at least two ways of looking at his current figures. From our point of view, the president's net satisfaction rating in June of this year doesn't really stand out when you compare it to when he first started his term. Back in September of 2016, his rating was roughly the same as his rating in June of 2021. And so that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is there's been a drop. And I think this has been in the news lately. From 79 plus 79 in November of 2020, which would have been the last quarter of that year, to plus 62 or plus 65 in May and then plus 62 in June. Some people would interpret this as a steady decline, but I mean, you have to look at it in terms of what happened during those quarters. Okay, in the last quarter of 2020, several things happened that may have contributed to this high net satisfaction rating. One would be despite the investigations that started in the Senate on PhilHealth, the president took action, or at least there was a perception on the part of the public that he took action. He created a task force. And the PhilHealth president at the time resigned, and the president appointed a new chief for that agency. You also have a declining number of cases that was beginning to indicate a trend that, this pandemic is now going to be behind us. This would be the last quarter of, you look at the figures, the weekly and daily infection rates were actually declining, not as fast as people would have hoped for, but still they were declining. And then you had also the signing in the fourth quarter of the Bayanihan to Recover law, which would have signaled to the public of the government's or even the president's decisive, intention to help those who were negatively affected by the pandemic. But, okay, you see there's a gap in the regular surveys, the way I see it, you see. Because between November, which was the time when the pandemic was slowly going to be under control, and May and June of 2021, there's a missing quarter. And during that quarter, of course, I suppose SWS couldn't hold any face-to-face surveys precisely because the country or much of the country had been placed on lockdown once again because of the rising number of cases that became more alarming. So at the time, you had thousands of cases daily and weekly, but at the same time, also the trend, so it depends on the timing also, no? The trend at the time, yes.
Yeah. Speaking of the timing, of course, to your point, there was another surge before June, and that changed a lot of the context. But now the context, of course, is we are coming off of another major surge, even a bigger surge, and now backdropped by this scandal and these issues with Pharmally throwing in, apart from the public health crisis, throwing in, apart from the economic malaise, also issues of corruption. With this new context, what might we be able to expect in any subsequent surveys?
Okay, this is just my speculation, but we have to ask ourselves now what has changed, and to what extent have these changes, or can these changes lead to any adverse or favorable effect on the part of the satisfaction rating of the president? You now have, as you said, not just thousands, but tens of thousands, every week of infections. And along with that, an increase also, not that big of a substantial increase in the number of fatalities, but still, the fatality rate is still quite high compared to earlier months. You also have the controversy over Pharmally. But the question there is, what's the president doing? Is the president being seen to be acting decisively compared to, let's say, how he acted, or at least he appeared to have acted on the PhilHealth controversy, the PhilHealth issue?
Okay.
And so, tignan natin, ano bang sinasabi niya ng presidente? At may ginagawa ba siya? No? Iba kasi rin yung may sinasabi ka and wala ka namang ginagawa. Okay, na puro pagmumura. No? I don't know what's coming out of the mouth of the president. Yes, Robbie.
Okay. Professor Tigno, maraming salamat po. That was SWS Fellow and Political Science Professor George Tigno. How did former presidents fare in terms of satisfaction rating in their last days in office? According to data from the SWS, the late former President Noynoy Aquino was leading former presidents in recent history with a satisfaction rate of plus 29, which was moderate in June 2016. His predecessor, ex-President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, meanwhile, fared poorly with a minus 31 in satisfaction rating. Former President Joseph Estrada had a positive 9 satisfaction rating before he was ousted, while ex-Presidents Fidel Ramos and Cory Aquino scored plus 19, plus 17 respectively.
These are the other big stories tonight. Vice President Leni Robredo is open to run once again for the second top post in the country if that would spell unity for the opposition. From as high as 30% weeks ago, growth rate of COVID infections in the country has plummeted to just 4%, but the health department is warning against complacency. And it might just be the collaboration you never knew you needed. Coldplay and BTS have just released their much-anticipated collaboration, My Universe. These big stories after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. Bongbong Marcos just got nominated as the standard bearer of the party founded by his father.
But Marcos Jr. is still on the fence about running for president. Del De Vera with the details.
The late dictator Ferdinand Marcos's kilusang Bagong Lipunan nominated his son Bongbong as its standard bearer for 2022. KBL said the nomination was unanimously approved by its members. Marcos thanked KBL in a recorded message and joined the online forum. He, however, made no explicit statement accepting the nomination. This prompted questions as to whether he will actually run.
Maraming elemento yan eh. Siyempre, kasama dyan yung karanasan mo. Politika naman, para kamihan talaga ng boto. You have to be able to make alliances. You have to find a consensus.
But for KBL President Efren Rafanan, Marcos already made up his mind.
Marami pang mangyayari. That is a matter of strategy. But for sure, and we are 100%, BBM will run for senator. Or for president, I should say.
Marcos clarified he's still part of the Nacionalista Party. KBL and NP used to be an alliance but split up in 2009. He ran and won for senator under NP in 2010. Marcos also noted that he's still in talks with potential allies. He didn't float any names, but there are speculations that he might be reaching out to President Rodrigo Duterte. Duterte had earlier formally accepted PDP Laban's nomination for vice president. Despite declaring her cop-out, Marcos believes Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte Carpio might still be in the game.
I still consider it a possibility na magbabagong isip niya. But for now, we consider it na tama yung kanyang ipapagpatuloy niya yung kanyang sinabi na hindi siya tatakbo.
Several groups meanwhile criticized KBL's move. Bagong Alyansang Makabayan said BBM's presidential bid is a supreme irony as it was recently the anniversary of the martial law which his father had declared to stay in power. Bayan is optimistic that people won't allow another Marcos to rule the country. Campaign against the return of the Marcoses and martial law added that it will be a continuation of Duterte's murderous rule. For News 5, Dale De Vera, we are One News.
Vice President Leni Robredo said running again for vice president is among her options for 2022. In an interview with Radyo Katipunan, Robredo confirmed that aside from the presidency, she's also being urged to either vie for the vice presidency or a local government position. In a separate video message, she thanked supporters and urged them to trust her as she seeks better governance in 2022. For now, Robredo says she is taking her time to come up with a final decision as her main goal is still to unify the opposition.
Ang dami ko namang options to run for president
Yes.
and for vice president again.
So, it's an option, ma'am.
Yeah.
Running for vice president.
So if that will spell unity, why not? Bukas ako sa kahit ano, basta magkaisa tayo.
In other news, growth rate of COVID infections in the country has gone down to single digits once again, but it might just be too early to celebrate, says the health department. Greg Gregorio explains.
The country may still be classified as high risk for COVID-19, but growth rate in infections has gone down tremendously. From 30% 3 to 4 weeks ago, that has plummeted to just 4% in the last 2 weeks. 8 regions, including Metro Manila, have been downgraded to moderate risk. The rest of the country, however, remains at high risk. What's notable is that for NCR+, cases are sliding. According to the health department, reproduction number in the capital dropped from 1.12 on August 24 to 1.004 on September 9. While transmission is slowing down, Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergara says the trend is still inconsistent. She attributes it to several factors. For one, testing output in virus epicenter NCR has dropped by 10%.
Ito ba ay dahilan ng rapid antigen test na paggamit o baka naman talagang wala na po silang case finds. Baka meron ding ang king logistical issues dun sa bawat local government. Tinitignan din po natin yan. Baka walang magsaswab o wala silang pang-swab.
For this reason, Vergara says it's still too early to tell if the pilot run of the alert level system in NCR caused the dip in cases.
Kailangan pa rin namin kumpirmahin na talagang bumaba, and hopefully by next week we can complete our analysis already.
By then, authorities may be able to decide if NCR will be downgraded to alert level 3 and if the scheme may be expanded outside the region. For now, the IATF has further eased guidelines under level 4. Outdoor exercises are now allowed outside a person's general area of residence.
Individual outdoor exercises na pinapayagan na basta hindi required manatili sa kanyang bahay ang mag-e-ehersisyo.
Quarantine classification for some areas outside NCR are also changing. Starting today until month end, Abra, Baguio, and Bohol are under GCQ with heightened restrictions. Ilocos Norte is placed under GCQ. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
For the big story in sports, it did not take long for Filipino gymnast Carlos Yulo to bounce back from his subpar Tokyo Olympics campaign. Yulo bagged 2 medals in the 2021 All-Japan Senior and Masters Gymnastics Championship. The 21-year-old Yulo captured the floor exercise title after tallying 15.3 points, then settled for the bronze in the vault with a score of 15. Coach Monehiro Kugimiya described Kaloy's triumph as the redemption arc following his shaky performance in the Olympics. Up next for Yulo is the 2021 World Artistic Gymnastics Championships in Kitakyushu, Japan in October. Time for another quick break. When we return, more footage of Bree Johnson's final moments with Julian Ongpin emerge. Her family also blasts the PNP's seeming defense of Ongpin. The details after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. CCTV footage obtained exclusively by News 5 shows the final moments of visual artist Bree Johnson together with her supposed boyfriend Julian Ongpin.
Bree's family has asked the NBI for a separate investigation into her death as they believe the PNP is coming for Ongpin's defense. Marlene Alcaide with this exclusive.
In the CCTV footage from last Friday, September 17, Bree Johnson and his supposed boyfriend Julian Ongpin was spotted leaving the resort hotel at 10:54 in the evening. A few hours later, the pair went back to their hotel room. Past 2 in the morning of September 18, Julian was seen walking out the room and sitting on the stairs. Bree followed him outside, followed by an argument between the two. Based on Julian's statement to the police,
was leaving for Julian not to leave her. So, maaaring may pinag-aawayan sila. Pwedeng yung pinag-aawayan nila, trigger yung emotional distress.
However, Bree's mom couldn't hide her disappointment over the police explanation about Julian and her daughter's altercation.
Ang galing naman ni General Peralta, he can lip read. Diba? Na-lip read niya agad yun. Kasi alam natin, CCTV, wala namang audio. Pero I'm sorry, General, ang galing niyo po. Pasensya na, galit ako.
The PNP had earlier said that they have yet to finish their investigation into the matter. But this morning, Bree's relatives and their lawyers have already personally asked the NBI for a parallel investigation. The DOJ has also ordered the Bureau to look into the case. The NBI is now looking for evidence and is planning to invite Julian for questioning.
The family, that the message of the director is to assure them that we will conduct a thorough and impartial investigation in this case.
The PNP welcomes the NBI's investigation.
Siguro po kung makakuha tayo ng additional na mga information or piece of evidence para mas maliwanagan tayo, makakatulong po ito sa kasong ito.
Bree's family is convinced that Bree did not commit suicide because she is preparing for her art gallery and also has plans to live in La Union. Bree's mother, meanwhile, has a message for Julian.
If you really love my daughter, sa sinabi mo doon sa isang statement mo, then come out, visit my daughter. You're very welcome to see her. And, tingnan mo what happened.
For News 5, Marlene Alcaide, we are One News.
A wedding coordinator in Cebu was arrested for allegedly scamming a bride after the crying bride's photo went viral after a couple victims of the coordinator emerged. Jenny Dongon has the story.
This photo of a crying bride in Cebu went viral. She was allegedly scammed by a wedding coordinator who did not book her wedding reception venue. That coordinator has now been arrested. Mandawi PNP said Nacer Fuentes attempted to commit suicide Thursday morning but was arrested in the afternoon for a past estafa case.
So, dinala siya doon sa Eversley Hospital and pagkaraan ng 2 oras, nag-sign siya ng waiver at umuwi pabalik ng konsolasyon. At doon na nga, nung na-verify namin sa record, may pending bench warrant noong 2017. So yun yung ginamit namin para arestuhin siya.
He allegedly had a similar offense in 2019. His victim then was Jonilyn Canoy. She and her groom found out on their wedding day that no reception venue was booked and failed to pay for a whole lechon worth 12,000 pesos. Their money dance cash was also pocketed by the suspect. When she saw the video of the viral bride, Canoy said all the trauma came back.
Hala, napatid niya siya gapon sa bisyo. Hala, ginagawa pa rin pala niya yung bisyo niya. Naawa po ako sa bride na talagang umiyak.
Meanwhile, Cherry Pie is overwhelmed by the wedding services offered to them, especially one from actress Neri Miranda. In a social media statement, she offered the couple a reception at the restaurant in Cebu, along with gifts and pocket money. But for now, the newlywed couple is focusing on the case they filed against their wedding coordinator who made their wedding day a nightmare. For News 5, Jenny Dongon, we are One News.
Another big story in sports. The Games and Amusements Board has suspended the professional license of San Miguel 3x3 player Daniel de Guzman. This was after de Guzman failed to show up in a video conference to shed light on his alleged involvement with gambling and game-fixing activities. GAB Chairman Baha Mitra said administrative proceedings will begin. He says de Guzman risked the possibility of losing his professional basketball license. Viral screenshots posted last week showed a bettor losing a huge amount of money after using a wrong tip allegedly given by de Guzman.
With the suspension of his license and blacklisting him, I don't think San Miguel would even, put him in the 3-on-3 lineup. Especially that he tarnished the reputation of the San Miguel team as well as the PDA. Were already involved in allegations because of what he said.
Stars have finally aligned for Coldplayers and the Army. Coldplay and Bts have released their much-anticipated collaboration entitled My Universe. My Universe dropped on all platforms at noon. Coldplay also posted its Galaxy-themed lyric video on YouTube. It features the two groups' handwriting in English and Korean. The lyric video reached 5 million views in 3 hours.
When I'm without you, I'm crazy. We are made of each other, baby. You are my universe, and I just want to put you first.
I just gotta say, Robbie, BTS, they've, come up with a lot of good news for everybody in this pandemic.
Oh, di ba last week, the big story was they're taking the cudgels for the United Nations, sending a message of goodwill for everybody to unite, also about climate change. And so, yun talaga dapat, yung talent mo, gamitin mo para sa kabutihan.
Ang dami na dami na nilang nirelease na collab and songs. Pero alam mo kung anong magpapahappy sa aming lahat dito, Robbie?
No, sige, ano?
Oo, yung pasalubong mong sausage. Diba, next week, abangan namin yan, ha?
Tandaan nyo kung saan galing, ha? Vienna sausage.
Ikaw na nagsabi, ayoko sana sabihin, eh. Pero good vibes lang naman. Well, that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again Monday at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. We are One News. Have a good weekend.